Good morning, everyone. My name is Camille Rose Carl Mendoza, and I'm here to present to you the outputs of our research entitled Racism in the Academe, an Ethnographic Research Among Indigenous Students at a State University in the Philippines. Together with me in this research is Ms. Precious G. Supan. What is our research about? So the access to mainstream education by the indigenous peoples can result in their social and economic empowerment. However, the assimilation of the indigenous learners to mainstream education has been a recent phenomenon in the Philippines. Discrimination persists as one of the disturbing experiences of the indigenous students inside the school. As a matter of fact, it is one of the leading causes of school dropouts among indigenous people students and a barrier to pursuing higher education. So we intended to do this with the following research questions. The first one is, how do indigenous students at a state university define racism in education? The second one is, how do indigenous students at the state university experience racism in education? And the third one is, what are the indigenous students' coping mechanisms in dealing with their experiences on racism in education? We employ the qualitative research design as it enables us as the researchers to know how people make meanings with regards to their experiences by accessing participants' thoughts and ideas. Following the ethnographical research approach, which denotes the search for predictable patterns in the lived human experiences through observation and participation with the lives of those who are under investigation. So this research has two locales. The first one is Pampanga State Agricultural University, and the second one is the local community of the indigenous people located at Sitio Buok, Bamban, Tarlac City. We employed a purposive and convenient sampling technique and has set the following criteria for the selection of the research participants. The first one is, he or she must be an indigenous enrolled college student, the availability and willingness to participate, and he or she must be knowledgeable and has experienced racism in the academe. We did an in-depth interview using an interview guide and audio recorder, and we also did participant and non-participant observation wherein we gathered field notes, as well as storytelling as a method through audio recorder and field notes as well. So what have we identified? We have identified that these indigenous students have defined racism, first one as in education as a social problem, racism in education as an act of bullying, and the third one is racism in education is a self-concept motivation. In this case, the participants have experienced verbal abuse, physical abuse, as well as psychological or emotional abuse from their colleagues or classmates in the classroom. So what do they do to cope up with racism? The first one is their indifference to avoid conflict. The second one is having significant others as moral force to pursue their studies despite the racism experiences. And lastly is to retaliate to those people who are perpetrators of bullying. So what have we concluded? So we conclude that indigenous students define racism in education as a social problem, an act of bullying an indigenous student on the basis of ethnicity, and a self-concept motivation in their academic achievement. Indigenous students were challenged with interpersonal and institutional racism in their interaction with non-Indigenous students, which were portrayed through verbal, physical, and psychological or emotional abuses. Lastly, Indigenous students were able to develop different coping strategies that helped them deal with the negative behavior of non-Indigenous individuals towards them. Moreover, by that, they stand firm and motivated to obtain college degree even if there is racism in education. We further recommend that national and local agencies should collaborate in the creation and conceptualization of innovative campaigns, programs, activities, and development strategies promoting the indigenous learners' safety and well-being inside the school. We also recommend for the agencies responsible in formulating, implementing, and coordinating policies, programs, and projects in the areas of basic and higher formal education that disciplinary actions penalizing violation towards indigenous learners must be strictly implemented. Lastly, further studies are recommended to explore the experiences of other indigenous students from different schools, universities, or other settings. That's all. Thank you.